Michael had a tough weekend.
I had a bad weekend.
Oh,
Very bad weekend.
football wise?
Yeah.
What team do you like?
Steelers. What
He
team
used
do
to
you
like them.
I always say
I like
the Lions, but I don't.
Oh, they're good. They won. They won last week.
Did they?
won,
Yeah.
yeah.
They won 13-10.
There too. Grand.
They're like boxing chairs. Be alert. Every time I go to the hair salon, when they put me together, you get like, is it like this? And it drives me crazy. So much better.
So you know what she wanted to say, so you can't do
No,
the,
you've got the computer.
There's a mom today, they're not gonna be comfortable.
She said a smile cookie made her not smile. Yeah. It's a technique from the smile cookie.
Do you look familiar? Cheryl Dieter. I know it from many years ago.
we're just waiting for Heather to get
Your
her
mom,
tea.
you folks, well, I don't know
Coffee.
much about you, but your mom was really good.
Vodka, I don't know, but whatever.
You still have an old one. You still have an old one.
Michael's doing graduation.
I know, she's busy, that's all right, I don't take it personally.
Recyclable, those, oh, that's
Yeah.
recyclable.
You gotta hold on for a
I
few
don't like
minutes,
them.
okay?
I'm with you.
Because I
Right.
can't carry it with my teeth.
Yes.
But
Just like kind of carry groceries and your coffee.
You still can, but it's iffy.
It might pop off though, I worry.
Oh, I said to somebody the other day, I'll let you hear it from Lori.
So I think that house
It's all about being grown.
sawdust
You
and
know,
all
so you're.
and it wasn't like they looked like they were just renovated.
Oh, really?
And pink cultures to
Cars,
cars.
right?
Could be.
I have cars.
Okay.
What, really?
You wreck in your house? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark's grandma's house has termites. And that's on upkeep of it as well. So,
My sister-in-law.
It was nice.
November, and that's what totally took it.
we got it was sort of a cheapish house on the water.
Are you gonna look again or?
And then it was like,
All right. What is this, like,
I know.
a month and a half we've been doing this already, isn't it? Something like
This
that.
will be the fourth week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, at least 4 or 5.
Oh, and this one.
Yeah.
This is the first
This
one.
is fine.
Yep.
So welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for making it back after 2 weeks ago.
That's almost
It was rather intense.
I wasn't here, so.
Yeah. And I've really, this week, I've had a number of conversations with people about being misunderstood. And I don't know if anybody saw my Facebook post on the event page. Somehow we'll nurture this thing a little bit, but I put up a post the other day because I had put this out as kind of a follow through of the obligation conversation from 2 weeks ago. Because like a lot of times when we pick a topic, we don't always stay there. And we did a little bit, but then we kind of got, which was awesome. I mean, it was there was some great stuff, but I kind of had a feeling from people, and a couple people messaged me about continuing this obligation conversation a bit. So I thought maybe what we could do, I really want you guys to like ask questions and participate from whatever's popping for you, and if there's anything you want to process or work through, feel free. This has been a really safe space. Amy had an amazing talk last week. Part 2 of probably 3 or 4 of the trauma conversation. This has really turned out to be really a cool thing on Wednesday nights. So Lisa will be here next week. I'm going to give her a little chance later to plug her thing, and then Heather's going to be joining forces in here. So it's growing, and it's just really been a fun community. Just a little bit of plug for Unity. last night we had, I think, 17 people show up for the Presence Process book gathering, and so we're going to be doing that for 10 weeks going forward from next Tuesday. So if anybody wants to make the trek down there, we're going to delay the one here. It just got to be too much. I'm going to talk to Phyllis about rescheduling and setting something up here to do that. It's an amazing book. It's an amazing self-journey.
It didn't work for me this time. Maybe-
What's that?
I said this time didn't work for me, but maybe.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it didn't work for a lot of people, so there just wasn't enough people to do it. And so, yeah, I really, after we talked about it a little bit, there were a number of people that were interested, and they were coming out of the woodwork last night, and I know there's probably 3 or 4 that couldn't make it in Windsor last. And it's not about making it every week, because it really is designed as a self-study. But I found in the 3 times that I've done it in a group that the group contribution is huge. So it's not about facilitating it per se. Courtney and I are actually leading the discussion, and last night everybody was chiming in. There were people like your mom that, she wasn't there last night, but that had, like, saw the flyer and ordered the book, and they're already like 80, 90 pages into the book and really absorbing it. So it's really been fun to see where it goes. So yeah, it's not like there's attendance taken and you have to be there every week. And Michael sets it up that way, that however you do the process, just do it as close as you can to the 10-week layout. So anyway, all that being said, this idea of misunderstanding is it's probably a 3 or 4 week kind of conversation. So if we get into that a little bit tonight from the obligation conversation, go for it. Or if there's another topic or something else that's pressing with, anything that pops for you guys, bring it up, because this is, I throw the topics out there based on what the energy feels like and what I have in conversations during the previous weeks with people. But that can change. When I do the talks at the church, I mean, it changes right up until like the morning of, because people, what's going on for people in their lives changes that rapidly, as we all know. And, this whole idea of transformation is an exploration, and it's not about the drudgery of therapy. Sure, stuff comes up and it gets heavy once in a while, but at a point you turn a corner towards just this space of curiosity of, wow, what would it be like to have more ease in my life? What would it be like to have more joy in my life? What would it be like to have more peace in my life, more freedom in my life? Those are things that we've kind of been led to believe from this reality are outside of us. So we're seeking that really is within. And I think even as part of the spiritual metaphysical New Age concept, we've kind of come to a point with that conversation that we're realizing that we've imposed some self-imposed ceilings with that conversation to a degree, and that this idea of awareness, this idea of infinite self, this idea of our psychic capacities, our infinite capacities, want to expand even more. And that involves constantly being in question to the point of solidifying less and less, having fewer and fewer beliefs. And I don't mean believing in something. I mean solidified beliefs that we've maybe picked up from family or picked up from schools or picked up from the society or government or what have you. And it never really resonated on some level, and we've always known that there was something off, at least with that, with us. And yet, in order to fit in order to keep peace, we acquiesced and moved on. But over time, we have a storage house full of those things that are really what is creating our discontent and our resistance in this reality, ultimately creating the anger and the discontent and all those things that are not really congruous with who we are. So obligation is one of those that I've found that's really been popping up a lot in the last 6 months, where we have obligated ourselves to those beliefs. We've also obligated ourselves to the family structure, to a lot of these patterns and beliefs that we've been led to believe were true, but are not really true for us. And in that awakening, there is a stir that happens a little bit at first, and then maybe possibly a little anger, and resentment, and all those things that happen in that grief diagnosis, right? With the 5 steps of, what is it, denial and anger, and there's like 5 dynamics of that are broken down into that process. And it's imperative, I believe, in order to truly come into oneself from that spiritual place. Those tribal beliefs, as Stuart Wilde called them, from family, from government, from society, from schools, etc., have to be recognized, have to be identified, and come to terms with as far as your own truth. In my estimation, from what I've read, there's 7.7+ billion people on the planet. I believe there's that many different definitions of love, that there's that many different definitions of God, and there's that many different definitions of truth, because we all have our own truth. And we've kind of walked around the planet thinking that everybody kind of has this own subscription to this major truth, and the seeking and all of that is actually what separates us from what we know. Nobody can really tell us what truth is. The facilitators and the gurus and the mystics over time have been able to point out what truth isn't. But the true gurus, the true mystics, have never pointed to what the truth is for somebody else. Which is really interesting when you think about what we bought into from school systems, from governments, from our parents, etc. It's not their fault. This has been handed down for a long time. And when people, when I'm working with people and there's this awakening that happens, and they want to go strangle one or both parents, I can relate, because there's this like, wow, they've been deceiving me with this stuff my entire life. But they didn't know what they were doing. They believed it from their parents or their place in society, et cetera, and it's just been handed down. And what's amazing to me is that we actually have a modicum of consciousness left in the world at all, given what has been handed down for centuries. And I was thinking about that the other day when, 15 years ago, I was on a major tear with, Monsanto and GMOs and chemtrails and the food and the water and the population and you name it. I was, I had a cause. And I realized the other day that in spite of all of that, there is still this tsunami, I'm going to say at this point, of consciousness that's not on the front pages of the paper, but we're all feeling it more and more. And it's groups like this that has me even more recognize that this thing has been alive and well, and it's actually surging at this point. And we're breaking through all the time to new ground. I saw a little bit of Dr. Joe Dispenza's video. He's been doing a lot, I think it's in California or something, and the people that are following him with the science end of it and everything, I mean, you didn't have those numbers 15 years ago. You know, Deepak had them maybe, and Wayne Dyer and a couple guys, but now the science is starting to catch up with the stuff that they were talking about, mostly from the East, or, you know, a lot of the yogic cultures and all of that, and this thing is really starting to percolate. I say, with these kind of groups, we're on the cutting edge of something that's really exciting in this reality. And Amy and I were talking the other day about, you know, sure, we watch TV and sports and all this other stuff, but really the juices of life is in the exploration of self. To really start to see what lights us up and be that invitation to the younger kids that something else is possible. And there's a little bit of a little bit of work to do when we're having these conversations out in the world, but they're not really having them in all the homes, and they're not really having them in the schools. But little by little, there's a shift, and I get that the kids are actually that aware that they're picking up on it, and they're actually, with those homes that don't have those conversations, they're actually starting to be that conversation in their families. And I've talked to a number of little kids that they're like, you know, they're a little frustrated with their parents because they're just not getting it, but the kids are. And that's what's cool to me, is that somehow, some way, they're getting beyond some of that instilled and impelled and perpetrated conversation that I grew up with, and I assume a number of you, that they're not rebelling, they're not acting out, they're just going with their knowing and not buying into what isn't true for them. It's kind of an interesting dynamic, because they should be sitting here telling us how they do it, right? So back to this idea of obligation, where we have for whatever, and as infinite beings, we are infinite kindness, we are infinite love. And the rejecting a parental idea or a school idea at a young age was not something we did. We trusted that they were the parent, that they were the adult, and even though we may have had another awareness, because of that love, because of that kindness, we acquiesced to the adult being right. And so we picked up a lot of these beliefs and thought processes and carried them through our lives until all of a sudden we realized that it really wasn't working for us. And I did a graphic a number, probably late last year, that talked about, you know, the prison that our schools and our parents and government and society has put us in is now the one that we're trying to break out of by doing the books and by whatever form of therapy or coaching or other transformational processes, books that we're using to unravel some of that. And this is not a new phenomenon. I mean, I think I told a number of you a couple weeks ago about this amazing book by Anthony DeMello called Awareness. And he talks about the difficulty that we have with awakening. And it's not something easily done, because we've kind of staked our claim in the territory of who we are, and to give that up is admitting some sort of failure under the guise of this reality, rather than being malleable and bendable and flexible to hear another 359 degrees of the conversation. So a lot of books have been written about this story, which is then, I believe, our addition to some of those beliefs that we picked up along the way. And then we expand on that and expand on that. And if you guys are willing later, there was an exercise that I got from one of the classes that I did a number of years ago, where you actually write down something that's bugging you right now. You know, it doesn't have to be super personal if you're not comfortable with it, just something that's bugging you. And you break into groups of 2, and you spend 5-7 minutes writing it out, and then you read it to your partner. And then they read it back to you, and then you read it to them again. And by the time you hear this thing, after you wrote it once and then heard it 3 times aloud, you really start to hear how ludicrous and how much we get caught up in what that story is. So I'm gonna let you percolate on that, and if it's something, I'm gonna bring it back up after the break, and if it's something that you guys wanna do, we can break into a group, into individual groups really quick and just really do it, because it's a phenomenal exercise, and it's a cool takeaway to be able to use it in the future. So, is there anything that has come up in the last couple of weeks that you guys wanted to talk about, or there's a question with any of it? I know there was a lot of questions after last week that I fielded a number of private messages during the last 2 weeks. Anything popping? Don't be bashful. Or something totally off topic. Maybe this will help. I want to show you a little video about has anybody read the book The Way of the Peaceful Warrior? Anybody saw the movie?
What's it called, sorry? Peaceful Warrior?
The way it was written a number of years ago by Dan McMillan, and don't look at my password, you guys. It was an awesome book, and there was a lot more depth to it than just, because I read it a number of times, and I happen to think Nick Nolte's quite a character. I have not seen the movie all the way through, but this is just a short little clip that I thought might kind of explain a lot of what's possible in transformation if you're willing to. Let's hope. Is it coming up there at all? Oh, there we go. Subject
Volume
was,
low.
Got it? My AV team. It's good? Yeah?
I don't even remember the last time I
Oh,
held
yeah.
it.
Hey, listen. Totally forgot about this. Trying to get this thing at the gym. It's pretty important. I'll make this quick. Sure. Hey! I'm talking to you! What the hell is wrong with you?
Said you were in a hurry.
So you pushed me off the bridge?
I emptied your mind.
You what?
I emptied.
No, you didn't. You threw me into the river.
And while you were falling, tell me, Dan, what were you thinking about?
I don't know.
Were you thinking about school?
No!
Grocery shop?
No!
The thing you had to hurry off to?
No! It was...
Present. Devoted 100% to the experience you were having. You even had a word for it. Ah!
You're mine, you know that?
Taking a lifetime of practice.
Okay, are we going to watch this?
There's been some talk in certain circles about meditation is all about clearing your mind, emptying your mind. The scientific truth of that is that only happens the day you die. quieting, sure, maybe, but emptying completely, not possible. What he's pointing at here is present moment awareness, that Michael Brown calls it. Being in the now, as Eckhart Tolle calls it. Be Here Now was a book that Ram Dass wrote years ago in the 70s. It's the practice of being in the moment. And there's no shortcuts. Contrary to half the emails I get and the Facebook pages that are out there that has this idea of instant transformation. There's a diligence, there's a discipline, there's a practice that is required. I think they tried it with Jack Nicholson and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but I don't think there's any real shortcuts to emptying your mind of all the programming and all the beliefs that we've accumulated, not only in this lifetime, but other lifetimes. And with the Passage to Possibility classes that I've done, it's about getting to that place where this idea of transformation, this idea of change, this idea of self-exploration is a journey of curiosity rather than of looking to something that needs to be fixed. We had this conversation the other night about self-help, which is interesting terminology to me. If you look at self being the higher self or the infinite self, it doesn't need any help. It doesn't need any help at all. We're whole and complete who we are. We were born a Buddha. We were born that Christ consciousness. We were born all of that. It's just the layers that have gotten piled on over time that we're looking to clear and return to that being, that infinite being that we are. That infinite kindness, that infinite glory, that infinite peace, that infinite freedom, that infinite love, that infinite God that we are. And I've never believed that there was a shortcut. It was just about locating that place in me that would allow it to be a journey, allow it to be coming from a place of allowance of self, a love of self. Then it goes to this curiosity of, wow, I've really unlocked a lot of the ways that I was that had me go to anger, or had me go to upset, or had me go to frustration, or had me, the list went on and on. Once we got that this is all an illusion, that it's all an opinion, and we can actually be in the moment without being at the effect of a parent or a boss or a road-raging lunatic behind us, that I found one of those on the way over here, and be still in the moment. It's that coming home to you, to ourselves, that allows that. And Amy, I know, agreed that one of the most connective ways to do that is with meditation. Spending some time in the morning, or sometime in the evening, or both, or sometime during your day, to spend some time with you. And if it's not comfortable at first, and I kind of get that most people here already meditate, take on some of the guided meditations that are out there. There's tons of them. I've got a couple if you want. They're on recording, I can send you. There's an awesome one if you're just getting started that Pema Chodron did a number of years ago, a lot of years ago now, I guess, because I had it originally, I guess, where she did a really gentle, I think it's both sides of this cassette, where she just talks about entering in this idea of meditation. It's, the Buddhists have their way, but there's a lot of different ways of doing it. And it's just about being still with yourself and finding a way that works. And if it's just sitting on the floor or sitting in a chair and just being with your thoughts and being with your breath, and just, even if it's only for a minute or two, it's not something that is necessarily easily started, but if you're willing to honor your word to yourself as a commitment to do it for 7 days or 30 days or what have you, trust that some days you're not going to do it, but be okay with getting back up the next day and giving it a shot again. It's something that really allows the energy of who you are to show up. Distinct from that conversation and chatter that's always going on up here. That one right there. That, when I stopped talking, whatever kept on going right there was what I'm talking about.
Is there any place around that you could actually buy meditation CDs?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Even cassettes, they still. The player's hard to find. Yeah, let me know. I'd be happy to point you to a couple. Here's the thing. It's like going to buy a dress or going to buy a pair of pants. Try them on. There's as many meditation ways of being out there.
Before I hear it, listen to it all night.
Pardon?
That's okay.
I fall asleep before I hear the end of it.
Yeah, and
That's okay.
that's not wrong.
Okay.
Because, even the other night I was doing the presence process meditation, and there's a different breathing that's involved with that one. And it was a long day, and all of a sudden, I don't know where that 5 or 10 minutes was towards the end of that meditation. But it's not about making that wrong. It's like, okay, your body needed to sleep. And the thing of it is that in all likelihood, you were at any rate, even if it was 10 seconds of at the beginning of that meditation, you were more still going into that sleep than you would have been without that 10 seconds. You follow me? So this is all a practice. It's just a practice, and it never ends. At least to my knowledge, it never ends. It's a way of really coming into self and noticing how many other distractions are out there that we're buying into or we're paying attention to that are keeping us from really being with ourselves. And the fact that we really, most of this culture anyways, North America, was not brought up with this in the household. Whatever age you are, and the culmination of stuff in storage is, it's difficult for people to get started in meditation. There was a guy last night, he was a young guy, 18, he said his grandmother was into it, and he started meditating when he was like 3. I was like, dude, right? It's like skiing for me. It was like I started young, so I got to be pretty good, but it's just being willing. Coming Children again wrote a book called Start Where You Are, and it's just beginning at being okay to begin wherever you are beginning, and not make it a thing. When I first got into AA, there were the guys in there that they started at. There was a good friend of mine, 16, and there were other guys starting at 70. Didn't matter. It takes what it takes. It's the same with meditation. And if I can do it, if my mom can do it. My mom picked up, there was a Napperstein, are you familiar with that, Napperstein? She's, she does it more from a medical healing kind of background. But it was highly recommended to me by one of my teachers, and my mom was going through some health stuff, and she vehemently fought meditation for a long time. Not that even that she thought it was woo, right? She just like, quite up in her head. And anyway, she found this one to work, but she had the same thing. She had.
I think it's to the point that you have so much in your head,
Mhm,
and you aren't allowing your head to shut off long enough to listen to the
mhm.
meditation.
That's the kicker.
Once you get going on it, like, I love it at night
Yep.
before I go to
Yep.
bed.
Yep. Yep.
And I have a CD player that only plays for 59 minutes,
Mhm.
so I just fall asleep. I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about
Yeah,
shutting
it's
it off
perfect.
or.
Yeah.
That's part
Yeah.
of the myth though, of like shutting off your head, because
Mhm.
your head's not going to shut off until you're not here anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So that's what I find, like
Mhm.
when I do meditation classes with people, that's what I find I always have them the first week, write down what it is that has maybe stopped you from doing in the past, or like what holds you back from not attempting. And most of the time that's what they write down, like I can't turn off my thoughts. Well, you're right, you can't.
Yeah.
They're spontaneous and involuntary, they're gonna show up whenever they want to.
And especially at night when you're sitting doing nothing, that's the time everybody
Mhm.
brings everything out, what they're supposed to do the next day and the day after, and what the kids should be doing and where they should be, and,
Mhm. Yeah, those shoulds.
yeah,
Just let it be.
woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yeah, yeah, and that's an awesome tell that you can take into a meditation. When you notice yourself saying should or ought, that's an obligation. And we aren't obligated to anybody or anything, period, paragraph.
I'm learning that.
I know it, and it's cool, huh?
And I've told my kids no in the last month, and they go, huh?
Yeah,
Busy,
and that's not always an easy one either.
busy.
And we've got to recognize when we start to transform ourselves and change and take on these new ways of being, that with our kids, with our families, with our siblings, with our friends, the way we interact with them, in part, we sourced that. We were part of the creation of that friendship. However that dynamic is, we were part of that creation. What happens when we start to transform and we get irritated with them, or we get upset with them, it's us. It's us, it's not them. We had that playing field set up with our rules that worked for us at the time, and the minute we change them, and now we're irritated with them. No. You allow that to change a little bit, and if they're not willing to shift and move with you, then look at the relationship. Is it still contributing to you? I mean, this is the thing that happens a lot, is that we want to stay married to a friendship, or married to a marriage, or married to boyfriend, girlfriend, or what have you, when it's changed. Especially if you're taking this stuff on and your partner or your friend is not. I'm not advocating divorce or splitting up. I'm just saying, where is your allowance? We used to say when I was doing the access work of, what would it take to have my allowance exceed my awareness? Because what happens in this awakening game, in this game of transformation, we start to wake up and we're more and more and more and more aware. And when we first come into this idea of awareness, things get really irritating. The world gets extremely irritated. And we're wondering why they aren't waking up too, and now we're pissed. On some level, right? It's because there's that teetering point of the allowance isn't quite up with the amount of awareness that we have.
So you just get rid of your expectations from people. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect anything from it, so I'm not disappointed,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, most frustration is from those unmet expectations, whether it is of somebody or something. Mine happens to be technology. I'm working. Right? As my friend Seymour says, I'm just not that well yet. Okay? But yeah, you're right. I mean, that's what it is. It's just where do I have it that on some level, I have it that that thing is more powerful than I am.
Just live for the day, don't expect anything from anybody, and just do my thing.
As long as it doesn't slip so far over that you give up your potency of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because there's this tendency, and I believe that this is a lot of what's happened in the world where people are feeling rather hopeless, and I don't mean this of you because I know you're not, but where that apathy and that complacency in the world is just, you know, the whole doing the 9 to 5, come home, make it through the week, living for the weekend, Sunday night, the angst starts up, Monday morning, you know, like this whole Monday conversation, really? It's self-perpetuated. It's just one day out of 7. But we bought into this, you know, 5-day thing and then the weekend for some of us. It's that side of the swing of we are the creators of our lives, contrary to what we've been told. And so anything that shows up in the course of the day is in some way, shape, or form our creation. Things don't happen to us. Nothing happens to us. That one is not easy to wrap your head around the entire scope of what that is, but even our maladies, even our death is a choice. And once you can see that, then you can truly be the creator of your life, of every aspect of your life. Because then we're no longer victim to anything. We're just creators. And we can create our relationship newly with our husbands and wives, we can create a relationship newly with our parents, we can create a relationship with our kids, we can create a new relationship with our bosses, because we get this thing that Michael's talking about. I don't have an expectation of what they're gonna say to me if I start speaking my truth. It's like you were saying with your kids, there's freedom in that, because that actually lets them know that they can too. Because otherwise there's some part of you you're watering down in those conversations with people and not letting them experience who you are. There was an amazing book that this associate minister gave me when I was a kid. I wanted to smack him because I didn't think I had anything wrong with me, but I knew inside I was a mess, right? I was probably 13 and the book was called Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am? And I stumbled across it about 6 or 7 months ago. And this thing was powerful. It is powerful. It's an amazing, amazing book. I don't even know if you can find it. It might be in the, you know, the used area at Amazon or something. But it's so what we were talking about 2 weeks ago when we started to talk about who are we in respect, not what are we. And we're not often asked that. And it came up that night that Amy did 2-3 weeks ago when she asked people to you know, just talk about themselves and, you know, what, and we all went, at least I, you know, the first response for me was, well, I've done that, and this is who I am. It's like after the comma thing, right? Like a doctor would be comma MD, or, you know, PhD is comma PhD. That's what we are, not who we are. And we haven't really been invited to be that, to show that, to be that full expression of who we are. And I get that these kinds of conversations and what we're really talking about with this consciousness is what I call a relational conversation, and that's the willingness to have conversations in your lives with those that you care about that are full throttle, open conversations that actually have some breadth and depth and scope. Being able to say whatever it is to a parent or a child or a spouse that you haven't said. And how many of those do we have? That we kind of, you know, like shoved another elephant underneath the rug in hopes in our absence at some point that there's going to be a safari that's getting held when we're not at home to shoot a few of them. Not that I'm an advocate of killing elephants, I'd rather them open up a back door and let them out, but it's that sort of thing. And those conversations are crucial, and that's where I say there's no shortcuts. They're imperative to have those conversations with people in your life to put the rubber to the road. And I know we all have it. There was a point at which I was doing a retreat out in California, and it just hit me that I really didn't know who my dad was. Didn't know who my dad was. Now he was participated in my life. He did Boy Scouts and, you know, did all my ball career and all this other stuff. But we didn't have what I thought was this father-son kind of relationship conversation. We never really sat down and talked guy talk on the couch. You know, we'd watch a ball game or something like that, but that was a distraction. It's what I call sports, traffic, and weather, right? Like that, those were the conversations. It wasn't anything that was like, you know, really interpersonal. And it just hit me, and it was like, okay, I'm going home and I'm gonna have whatever I can say. It wasn't about making him wrong, it wasn't any of that, right? The guy was an only child, and he was basically raised by his mom because his dad worked 12, 14 hours a day. So that was his life growing up. So having conversations with his pals, that was just non-existent. So to do that with a son, it was like, where was he gonna get that training? So I sat down with him one day and I said, Dad, what was that like when, you know, after 21 years of working with the company, that one company, and you had me, and then my brother and my sister all lined up to be going into college, and I was it happened in June, and I was already enrolled to go to college 3 months later. And that's when the company he was working for got bought out by another company, and they let everybody go. And he just looked at me, and he just went, wow, nobody ever asked me that. And I just felt, you know, like what he had been managing with that for, I don't know, 13 years, 14 years at the time that I asked him that. Like, how scary must that have been? You know, he's a young guy, you know, I mean, he had us as teenagers at that time. And it was not even a blip on the radar that anybody was, you know, going to counseling or anything like that at that time. And it just opened up this pathway of like this amazing conversation with him. And not that long after, I realized that my grandfather, his dad, died when I was 3 maybe. So my dad had to have been in like his early 30s, late 20s maybe. Do the math, I don't know. Yeah, probably late 20s. So his dad died really, really young. And so I said, what was that like? And he started crying. He'd never let that out. Even with my mom, he had let a little bit out, but he had never let that out. And it was just like, it wasn't like he was able to just talk it all the way through, but it was that presencing it, and especially to his son, it launched our father-son relationship into a whole new dimension, just from a couple questions, you guys. Just from a couple questions. It was simple, it wasn't, you know, and we had our rows, don't get, you know, I mean, you know, father and son in the 60s and 70s, and my hair like that. I mean, we did not get along on every topic, I want to tell you. I mean, I remember when the Beatle White Album came out, and I put all, you know, it came with these 8x10 glossies of John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and it was like, those were our, you know, those guys were our, I taped them up on my wall in my bedroom, And he's walking down the hall, and he looks in my room, and he sees those things, and he goes whipping into my room. And he wasn't violent, he didn't, he didn't hit us like that or anything, but he looked at that, and he was just like, and he just started taking them down. He goes, I don't care about you guys listening to these guys, but I'll be, and my dad never swore, he goes, I'll be goddamn if I let you worship them. And my brother and I are just like this, right? Like, oh. He, about 6 or 7 years after that, started showing early signs of dementia, of Alzheimer's. And it was the greatest, I told Amy this the other day, it was the greatest stretch of time prior to that and in that whole period where he, eventually died, not from Alzheimer's, but complications thereof. Because I was able to be with him in a totally different space due to those conversations. It's following your awareness. And when something like that starts to show up, as we do more and more of this work, you guys know this, the radio's frequencies start to get a little tighter on the bandwidth. And things are telling you. They're not even sometimes suggesting, they're telling you exactly what you could be doing to have this miraculous, amazing life. And we're less and less doing that, yeah, thanks, I got this. We're letting that in, and we're realizing what this idea of manifesting is really all about. Because the universe is constantly gifting us. Every second, every split second of every moment of every day. Anytime we're grabbing at something else, or we're feeling some sort of resistance or dis-ease or angst or agitation in our world, we're just grabbing at the wrong thing. Abraham talks about it all the time. That which isn't taking you closer to that closer vibration of who you are is just a choice. You're just getting further and further from the vortex by choice. The biggest thing of any of this stuff is to recognize that we are not victims and that nothing happens to us. We are the creators of everything in our lives. Now where are we? Amy's so ready to do the story breakup. What's happening out there? You guys, anything? Questions?
I think we need intermission time.
There? Good call.
It's halftime.
Let's do that. Yeah. You wanna take 10 minutes or something? Grab some water, yeah, okay. And then we can decide if we wanna do that little exercise or not. All right, let's do it.
The White Album.
The White Album.
I love it.
Yeah, the White Album.
There's paper and pens there.
Did I tell you when I took Amy to go see, who did I take you to see?
I don't
I took her to go see,
I fell asleep.
who did we go see at Tuxedo? She asked me who Paul McCartney was.
Oh,
She
come
didn't-
on. I mean, I get that you had to clear up Alan Trammell for me last week,
Yeah.
but
So she didn't know who